Hey guys, so I told you, tonight's homework would be would just be a short video that kind of goes over some of the problems that we'll do tomorrow. All right, that we'll do together in class. Nice job today. I continue to encourage you to make sure you're asking questions, participating. This way, we're making sure we're all together without moving forward. All right. So this PDF file here, I just want to go over some of them. I'll jump around a little bit, but as a quick review, let's start by looking at number one and number two. So these this first problem here already has x squared by itself, right? There's nothing we have to add or subtract or divide to the other side. So when a problem is set up like this, you just take the square root of both sides. Now, in simplifying the radical, the square root of 25, well, it happens to be a perfect square. So there's really not much simplifying that you would have to do other than knowing 25 is in fact a perfect square. In number two, right, we can't take the square root of both sides until we isolate whatever is being squared. So in other words, get the x squared by itself. And you do that by dividing both sides by 3. Again, here you'll notice that 16 is a perfect square. So our answer is plus or minus 4. Every answer, okay, every part, every problem will have a part where it's plus or minus, okay? So oftentimes students will forget about including that. Number 3 over here is not an equation. Something might have got cut off here when I was copying, so just ignore that one. But take a look at number 4. So in the steps that we went over today, I said isolate whatever is being squared. So if you were to ask yourself, all right, what's being squared in number 4? It's actually parentheses x minus 2 that's being squared, right? It's this whole thing. So that's what we have to get by itself. And to do that, just like in the last problem, we're going to just divide both sides by 3. So again, this parentheses here, this quantity, is what's being squared, right? There's nothing else that's being added or multiplied or subtracted on this side. It's just this quantity squared. So once that's isolated, you're going to take the square root of both sides. Now, when you take the square root of x minus 2 squared, all that happens here is everything goes away, and you're left with just x minus 2 equals, remember, plus or minus. Root 7 does not break down, right? 7 is a prime number, so that's just going to have to stay underneath the radical. Now, as you would solve any equation, right, you have to get the variable by itself. So we want to solve for x here. So to do that, we just would simply add 2 to both sides. And as you continue to do these problems, you'll start seeing the pattern in which the answer has to be written. But this is going to be 2 plus or minus the square root of 7. All right. You can't, this doesn't become plus or minus 2 root 7 because then that would be multiplying. We just bring the 2 over, and it's 2 plus or minus the square root of 7. So let's look at number 5, okay? Again, we got to get this parenthesis, this quantity squared by itself. Now, when you have a fraction, right, think about how you clear fractions. What do you do to both sides? How do you get rid of that? Well, you multiply both sides by the reciprocal of the fraction. So in other words, we're going to multiply both sides by 5 over 1, or just 5. And now that leaves us with x minus 4 squared equals 30. Again, whatever's being squared is now isolated, so now we square root both sides. Everything else goes away over here. No more parentheses, no more exponent, no more radical. We're left with just whatever was inside the parentheses, x minus 4. Now, the square root of 30. Again, 30 is a number that you think would break down, right? You might have a feeling it does, but it doesn't, right? There's no perfect square factor of it. 4 does not go into it. 9 does not go into it. 16. So we can't break down the square root of 30, but we still write plus or minus nonetheless. And to get our answer, we just have to get x by itself, which means we would have to add 4 to the other side. And that comes out to being a decimal. 4 plus or minus the square root of 30. All right. Now I said this would be a short video, so maybe we have time for 1 or 2 more. in this one, okay? What do you think we got to do first here? We got to isolate x minus 3 quantity squared. So you never multiply or divide first. You should first make sure you can't add or subtract anything. Then you look to multiply or divide. So the first thing we have to do is subtract 2 from both sides. Then you divide by 3. All right. Isolated. Now you take the square root of both sides. 8 does break down. So maybe you got to go off to the side, think about how you would rewrite 8, but it's just going to be 4 times 2, and 4 is a perfect square, so a 2 is going to come out. But remember, it's always plus or minus. So the square root of 8 breaks down to being 2 root 2. All right? Got to get x by itself, so you got to add 3 to the other side. So you got 3 plus or minus 2 root 2. All right, we got one more that I'm going to ask you guys to do. Let's find a good one here. All right, let's look at number 8. Let's do number 8 here together. So take a pause in the video and try number 8. All right, or at least think about how you would start it. Okay, so hopefully you did that. And hopefully you told yourself, all right, first thing you need to do is add 66 to the other side. Right? Our first step here is isolating whatever's being squared. And if you ask yourself what's being squared, it's this parenthesis. Once we add 66, how do you clear a fraction, right? How do you get the fraction away from this side, right? You multiply by the reciprocal. So we got to multiply the other side by 3 over 2. Now, you could do 66 times 3 divided by 2. You could try to cancel some things here, right? Like 66 divided by 2 is 33. So we should get 99 over here. All right, now we got the parentheses. We got the quantity squared by itself. You take the square root of both sides. And now you think about how the radical of 99 breaks down. So I think it's 9 times 11. 9's a perfect square. So if you think of it as 9 times 11, 9's a perfect square. 3 is going to come out, so plus or minus 3. The 11 stays underneath. And now to get our answer, we got to get x alone, which means subtract 8. So as these problems are very repetitive, right? Your answers are going to look very similar. Take a look at my answers for the last 4 problems we did. There's a number, plus or minus a radical. Sometimes the radical simplifies. So there's a number, plus or minus a number outside, and then a number inside the radical. How did we find that? Well, we looked to add or subtract. We look to clear any other numbers by dividing or multiplying by a reciprocal. We take a square root of both sides. We might have to simplify a radical. All right. Where can mistakes happen? Well, they can simple, addition or division or missed signs, small mistakes. So, guys, again, take notes as you're doing this. I appreciate those of you that watched this tonight and paid attention in class today. Hopefully, we're able to start class tomorrow just by kind of jumping right into these problems, and this kind of gives us a little more level, like a higher level of comfort to start class. So enjoy the rest of your night. All right, thanks, guys, and I'll see you tomorrow.